What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 37, David vs. Goliath, the premiere episode. So we are finally off of hiatus, and my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and this episode was all kinds of crazy. I always think it's really interesting how, we still managed to have, firsts after this show has been on the air for 38 seasons. So we had 37 seasons. Oh, getting ahead of myself. So I thought it was interesting that we had a first and a really dramatic one, I think, this season. So this episode was a really interesting way to start the season, I feel like.
Yeah, for once we got to hear from everyone on both tribes. So equality in screen time finally for everyone. Hopefully this season, I think editing this episode was very interesting. It was definitely better than other premiere seasons that we've seen in the past. I think overall, just the premiere episode, 90 minutes. So it wasn't the whole 2-hour time slot because of Big Brother. So less commercials, one, which was amazing. And then two, I think we spent a good amount of time on both tribes, learning about people, and it sets us up well for next week when we will have someone getting voted out at Tribal.
Yeah, I feel like it's really interesting because normally in the first episode of a season, someone does get gypped on screen time just because they need to set up the whole arc of who's going to get voted out. And even though no one got voted out this episode, they still gave us a couple of people who are this person's rubbing people the wrong way. So I thought it was really interesting because it was kind of like the pilot episode of a lot of television shows where it's it starts setting up challenges for the characters without actually giving them anything too big in the first episode. So it was kind of interesting to see what Survivor was like with the quote unquote pilot episode.
Yeah, so in this podcast, at the end, we're going to talk about who we think is set up well in the tribe for next week versus maybe someone who has a little bit of work to do with their social game coming into next episode. But literally, it was 9:15, so 15 minutes before the episode was supposed to end and Big Brother was supposed to start when my internet went down, whatever, and the show came back, and then Pat was on the freaking beach dying, and I was like, holy shoot, how much of the episode did I miss? It literally went out for 2 seconds, and then he was on the beach, and I was like, there's only 15 minutes left. They're not going to Tribal, and I was like, God dang, the person who inspired this season's theme, med-evac, on the first episode, and his tribe loses the immunity challenge. What are the freaking chances?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting too because they don't have any footage of him getting injured because the people are always on lockdown when they're moving from location to location. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's so crazy. But then also, I feel like it was kind of a good thing that Pat got injured and then not one of the Goliaths. Not that I wanted Pat to get injured, but I feel like it would have sucked even more if the Davids had won and then Pat had gotten injured because it would have been we did something good, but we still got screwed over.
Yeah, talking about Pat, and then we can go into how this was honestly the best thing that could have happened for the Davids, which is really sad to say, but Pat, in his exit interview stuff that have come out now, he doesn't remember anything from that day. That is so crazy. He just woke up in the hospital basically, and he was saying he was dealing with a lot because first off, it really sucks to be med-evac from this game, obviously, because you have so many what ifs, because you're not voted out of the game, whereas if you are voted out, you might still have those regrets or what ifs or whatever, but at least you had that closure per se that you were voted out of the game, whereas Pat, literally on day 3, having not even played the game really, was forced out of the game, first tribal council.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, especially because since he was med-evac this early, it would be difficult for them to bring him back because it's they haven't really seen whether or not he has enough gameplay to warrant bringing him back for a second season. So I feel really bad for him, but I do agree with you that this is one of the better things that could have happened to the David tribe. So
yeah, because Pat says, like, oh, he would 100% play again if asked. And yes, like, Pat did inspire the theme for this season. Jeff seems to really like him, but, like, viewers, if you did another, like, med-evac season of bringing med-evac people back like we've seen in the past, would Pat be someone that would be in that, like, group? I think Neil would be in that group, but, like, Pat... But, like, I don't know. If you're bringing Caleb back for 2 seasons, maybe Pat is on that list, but I don't think he has that big of a fan base maybe after 1 episode. But he said that he wouldn't have been the one voted out this episode if their tribe did go to tribal, because he was saying they did have the numbers to vote Nick out. But, like, you never know, you know? So Pat could have gone home, voted out, or medevac this episode. We'll never know.
Yeah, but it was kind of like a good thing for the Davids just because they never had to lose any of their like tribal unity or whatever. So
yeah, honestly, I feel like I would be the dick on this season. Like, oh, you know, Pat's like hurt. He has to leave. That sucks. But haha, y'all, we don't have to go to tribal anymore. And that has got to be something that you're probably thinking in the back of your mind. Like, okay, him leaving actually saves the Davids from going to tribal. You won't have that weird tribe dynamics because no lines are drawn. No one knows like who's on my side, who's on your side, who's on whatever side of the vote yet. And I think someone getting medevac like this, it brings everyone closer together. So now the 9 Davids are going to be so tight because they've already been through so much, losing someone and losing the first immunity challenge. And I think Nick dodged a bullet. I think the target will shift. You know how quickly things change. I think Nick not having to go to tribal this episode was good for his game, and it's probably good that Pat went home for a medevac over going to tribal and getting votes potentially.
Yeah, I feel like this is good for Nick because he kind of started repairing his relationship with the tribe by opening up about like his relationship with his mother and stuff. But I feel like it's one of those things where like having the extra 3 days, if they do go to tribal again, might help him build like more relationships that he needs in order to get his game in a good place.
Yeah, so honestly, very sad to say, but Pat getting medevac was probably the best scenario for the David tribe to go through instead of going to tribal council, and then the episode was over.
Yeah, it was kind of like I knew going in that Pat was going to be medevac just because I'm awful at avoiding spoilers and I ended up not being able to watch it on Wednesday night, but I was still kind of shocked about like the way that it happened. So
yeah, so going to the top of the episode, the opening challenge. We talked a little bit about the challenge setup in our last video when we talked about the twists and tricks of the season. So Jeff is talking about like capitalizing on advantages. It's not really who has the advantage at any given point, but it's like what is the advantage. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Christian says that appearances are deceiving. So going into this first challenge, the Goliaths pick Alyssa and Christian as the weakest. I was so sad. They looked so bummed that they were picked, and they called Christian Big Bang Theory. I would be so offended.
I feel like part of it was like trying to get into their heads and make them like doubt themselves or whatever. But I was kind of just like, ugh. Like, I respect that they both look kind of weak, and, like, they both owned up to the fact that they were weak, but still, I feel bad for them.
Yeah, to be called out on the first day like that as the weakest, and you're called Big Bang Theory and blue-haired girl, like,
Purple-haired girl.
Must suck. So I am glad that they pulled it through because Allison and John, they nominated themselves, picked themselves as the strongest for the Goliath tribe. Then they went head to head. So like anything in Survivor, I feel like the first 2 stages of this challenge were similar difficulty. We saw that they were sort of neck and neck through it, and then the difference was the puzzle. And we see that a lot in Survivor, I feel like, where the puzzle is the great equalizer or where you can get ahead or fall behind.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting just because, like, we both know that there are algorithms to, like, solve slide puzzles and other kinds of puzzles. We tried to use an algorithm to solve the Insanity Cube Tower that we did. We failed, but, like, we know that these algorithms exist. So it's really interesting to see someone who is an expert on algorithms for puzzle solving actually solve a puzzle, because he used that algorithm to solve it. It wasn't just, like, some crazy theoretical thing that he knew. And I was like, wow, it was almost as crazy as that time that Spencer did the, like, puzzle in, like, 10 seconds or whatever.
Speaking of all of these puzzles, we have all 3 of these challenges on our YouTube channel. So if you want to learn how to do a slide puzzle, a normal 3x3, if you want to know how to do Spencer's like 5-piece puzzle that he memorized before the show, we have that. And the Insanity Cube puzzle, which is like the 4 cubes stacked, different colors have to show out on each side. We have that on this channel as well. Tutorials, DIYs of these challenges, shameless self-promo. Check them out, they're pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, I found myself rooting for the Davids during this challenge and in the immunity challenge, which I feel was different from our preseason, because preseason I was like, oh yeah, Goliaths, they're so cool kind of thing. I would want to root for them. But then during these 2 challenges, I really felt wanted the Davids to win. And then I was sort of bummed in the immunity challenge when they didn't win.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where, like, the editing of the show definitely made you want to root for the Davids, but, like, yeah, I feel like the Goliaths in general were just so cocky. Like, just thinking about it makes me shudder a little. Like, everything that came out of their mouths was like, ugh. I especially thought it was interesting that, like, during the opening sequence, like, Jeff kept saying, like, we know that you guys had to work hard, but you still, like, started higher than the Davids did. Because I feel like in the David versus Goliath theme, there might be kind of a temptation to negate the fact that the Goliaths did work. So that was interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting, I feel like, when they put up Pat versus Allison's story, and then Pat was saying, you know, he'd never even had the opportunity to go to college, that kind of stuff, versus Allison is a doctor like her parents kind of thing. And I was like, shoot, you know, like, this is the real deal kind of thing. The differences, disparities, whatever you want to call it, between the 2 tribes. And yeah, like you said, I think the editing, the music, everything was like trying to root for the Davids. Like when they picked Christian and Lursa, I felt so sad. And then when Christian was talking about how he did these coding algorithms in undergrad, I was like, holy crap, you know, likable guy, you know, slider puzzle algorithms. But when he started talking like that, I'm like, is that a good or a bad thing to say, like on the first day, 10 minutes in?
I thought it was interesting because both of the puzzles that they ended up doing were slide puzzles, or slide type puzzles. So it really did play to his strengths. But like you said, was it smart to, like, reveal that much about yourself on the first day? Who knows? But
Yeah,
he wasn't the only one that, like, ended up saying a lot about himself on the first day, because Mike White also, like, monologued to his tribe about who he was.
Yeah, I think specifically with slider puzzle algorithms, it's hard because, you know, there are slide puzzles in the show. Puzzles. Chrissy won so many immunity challenge because of the puzzle. So that could be threatening, I feel like, to some people, especially when he said it. I thought it was really funny. I was like, this guy's so cute, like endearing. And then the Goliaths, they like all rolled their eyes because they just lost the challenge. And then now you have this guy talking about how he coded in undergrad slide puzzles, which I think could rub people the wrong way. But I thought it was funny editing after the fact when Christian was talking about, like, oh, all the things he did wrong with the slide puzzle and how he could have made it faster. And then the cuts just kept going back to back. It was really funny, but I don't know if it's good or bad to say at the time.
Yeah, I think it also could have been like a kind of thumb to the nose for the Goliaths, like, haha, you judged a book by its cover, and that's what, like, fucked you over. Because it was like, like, just because he looked weak, they assumed he wouldn't be able to do the challenge, and because he was weak, it was like his secret weapon or whatever. So That was interesting. I also found the cut really amusing. I started laughing and my roommate was like, what are you laughing at? So.
Yeah, then it also goes to the fact, like, appearances are deceiving. Your weakness might be someone else's strength, and you can't just base it off physical strength. Obviously, Christian might not be the most buff dude out there, but he has the brains for it, kind of thing. So it's a lot of different factors, and that's what makes Survivor so interesting. So speaking of interesting, moving along, women not finding idols as much as men was a very interesting statistic, and honestly, like, something that I've never realized or thought about until it was brought up this episode.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because, like, once they said, like, the reasons why women didn't find a lot of idols, like, they were like, oh, girls are always, like, supposed to sit there and weave the palm fronds while the guys go and get firewood or whatever. I was like, that does happen a lot. Like, I feel like whenever women go out to look for idols, they always use the going to the well excuse, whereas men always use the gathering firewood excuse. So,
yeah, I really liked how it was included this episode because, you know, these super fans, we all know these statistics, things like that. A lot of people talk about being on the right side of the numbers come the merge boot because, like, a big majority of the people who ended up winning the game voted right at the merge boot. And if you're on the wrong side of the numbers for that, then you're sort of having an uphill battle after the merge. And so that's a really important vote for super fans, a lot of people who know about, like, how things play out on seasons. And so I thought that was cool how, like, these people know a lot about the show, and then it's actually being brought up and affecting, like, the show, because then they made a more conscious effort of, like, going out and searching. And I don't know, it makes sense because, like they were saying and you were saying, Alyssa, girls are always at the camp with the fire, cooking, whatever. And it's like gender roles are happening on Survivor too, like in the real world and in Survivor. And that was just like, go Allison and Angelina. I like that scene.
Yeah, I like that scene too. I'm really hoping that this was like foreshadowing that one of them is gonna find an idol, but I don't know.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting. I did not know that little tidbit. It was very interesting. So speaking of idols, we have Mike looking for an idol and getting called out. So, I mean, it's hard because it's like the first person is always called out for it, which sucks. And Mike happened to be the first person to be caught looking for the idol. And then once everyone else started looking for the idol, it was like, you know, they're not sketchy for doing so, but it's like first day, first few days, whatever, it looks sketchy. And it's like, I sort of like Mike, so I was bummed out that he got that target.
I love that he was like, I'm not looking for the idol because I need it, just because I want it. Because I was just like, well, now that they've discovered that you're looking for the idol, you're gonna need it, honey. Just because, like, that's the sort of thing that does target you. So, like, looking for an idol without finding an idol is yikes.
Yeah. And, like, especially once you're recognized too, like we were mentioning, he was on The Amazing Race. He was recognized for being on The Amazing Race. And people were saying how, like, oh, he doesn't need the money. He's wrote all of these big TV shows kind of things. And I don't know. I feel like that could be a very big early target, especially because he is older, less buff than all the other people on his tribe. And yeah, he technically doesn't need the money. And being on The Amazing Race, you could also say, like, doing one reality show and then coming to this one, you have a little bit of an upper hand, maybe with challenges. Amazing Race has roadblocks, so you have to strategize and whatnot for that. And, like, Natalie was on The Amazing Race and then won. Other people have gone merge after being on The Amazing Race and then coming to Survivor. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, just because, like, a lot of people used, like, his time on The Amazing Race to kind of gauge him as a person and as a player. Like, they're like, he's someone to watch out for because he did all of these things on The Amazing Race that were, like, not, like, super nice to do, but were, like, good game moves.
Yeah, so just doing that, like, Caleb was recognized for Big Brother kind of thing. So I don't know. It's always difficult because, like, it'd be so cool to be on different reality TV shows and, like, the trifecta 3, Big Brother, Amazing Race, Survivor, it'd be freaking amazing to go on. But then it's like you have to plan which order if you like have that kind of clout and status that you are able to pick kind of thing if you're recruited or whatever. Because I think definitely your past can affect your present in Survivor, which is like, I don't know, such a weird thing to think about and maybe plan. But like, I don't know. Honestly, with this, we'll talk about Dan and then go back to Natalie. But I honestly wish they should just have a season with no idols at camp, because then everyone would be wasting their time looking for idols for nothing. And I think that'd be funny to watch.
That would be really funny, especially if they give them like a lot of idol clues that were just absolute nonsense.
Like, yeah, because it's like every single premiere episode, and it's happening so fast. Someone finds an episode in the freaking premiere episode, in the first episode of the season after the premiere. And then it's like, okay, so we know you're going to hold on to this idol X some number of days. You might play it pre-merge. You might hold on to it into the merge. And then it's like everyone goes into Survivor expecting to look for an idol at your home camp kind of thing, because that's where it's always been. But I liked the idols at the challenges maybe, but like, I don't know. I just think everyone goes into the game now like thinking that there's an idol at camp, so they're looking. Maybe there's not an idol at camp and you're wasting your time. So I would love to have those funny edits of watching people waste their time.
Yeah, I love the montages that they do in like Survivor, where it's just people looking absolutely ridiculous. So a montage of people like futilely searching for an idol that doesn't exist, that would be perfect.
Yeah, so speaking of idols as well, Dan finds an idol, and Dan, both of our winner picks this season, and seems like a very big fan favorite, Dan. I was like, Dan, he mentioned how he was with very attractive women like 4 times this episode, and I'm like, why do you keep bringing this up?
Yeah, I didn't like him very much at all. Like the moment he got on my screen, I was like, am I happy about you being my winner pick? No, I'm not.
Yeah,
it just seems like kind of like borderline creepy.
Exactly. Like it was like high hopes. He came in, and then first thing we hear about him, he talks about his like life and the SWAT and everything like that. And then cut to him saying, oh, I'm a Goliath. I wouldn't be the Dan today if I hadn't lost all the weight. And now I feel comfortable talking with and all these attractive women are calling me attractive. I'm like, weird to say, honestly, I feel like. And then cut to Happy Music Showmance with Kara. And I'm like, great. And then he mentions that again, how Kara is the most attractive person like he's ever met, right up his alley. And I was like, it's literally day 1. Y'all just met. And now you're talking about kissing in private. I was...
I revoke wanting Dan to be my winner pick. Like, anyone who has a showmance is no longer my winner pick. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it was just too much flirting for the first episode. And I don't know. I'm all for falling in love on reality TV. Big Brother has more love than interesting. But Dan, I don't know. Stay single. I don't know. He was just talking too much about how attractive the girls were, and it's sort of uncomfortable. That was my point.
Yes, that is something I entirely agree with. For a while, I thought he was Alex, whatever his name was, the guy who posted spoilers or whatever, because I was like, that's the kind of thing I expect from someone who would do what he did, not from someone who is winner pick for a ton of people.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. He finds the idol. It was a very interesting way to edit, I think, how he found the idol. It was backwards. So everyone goes out, looks for the idol. And then it was more of a surprise because he was like, haha, jokes on everyone. I have it in my pants. He pulls it out and he's like, this is the immunity idol. And I was like, is this fake? Is this real? And then cut to him finding it with Natalia and Kara. And I'm like, interesting. I thought maybe they missed like him finding the idol, so that's why it was like backwards kind of thing. And I liked how they edited it because, you know, you can usually guess when someone is finding an idol, the music picks up, you know, the cuts, they're looking, and they find it, great, happy music, and then cut to confessional, they are pulling it out, reading, whatever. But this, it's like, oh, anyone could have found it, and then cut to Dan. Dan's found it. I thought it was a really cool way to edit it.
I thought so too, and I was wondering if there was like some subtle metaphor about it being in his pants when he was talking about the girls so much. But then I'm wondering if like maybe I've just like taken too many English classes. So who knows?
Yeah, ruins the idol finding moment. He was like, I found the idol with the hottest girls on the island. And I'm like, way to ruin the moment, Dan. Come on, just say you found the idol. And like, with people in your alliance. Why do they have to be hot girls? And like, why do you need to say hot in front of the girl? Like, why not call them equal alliance members? Come on.
Yeah, just like also the fact that he was with hot girls doesn't really matter just because it actually makes it worse for him, you know? Like,
yeah. And maybe he plays it for one of these girls that he is aligned with, but who knows, Dan? Yeah. So feels like he's going far, whatever. He is a lot of people's fan favorites. He's our winner picks, so we have to like Dan, but he sort of was making us uncomfortable this first episode. Similar to Natalie rubbing people the wrong way on this premiere episode, we already see this Natalie versus Natalia name battle, and we have this subconscious name bias, which is very interesting because we've mentioned this in our other preseason stuff, how we thought this would happen. And the episode preview for next week shows that a showdown is going to happen between them two.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting just because I don't think the showdown is going to go quite the way we expected it to. I think we both had really high hopes for Natalie as well. Like, we were like, oh, she's going to come in and she's going to kick ass, but instead she just like started rubbing people the wrong way. So
yeah, I feel like Natalie is in some hot waters. We both wanted her to be like the kick-ass bomb CEO kind of girl, but then it did rub people the wrong way, her telling people what to do but not doing anything. And I feel like people will get rid of Natalie because she's more maybe intimidating, smarter versus Natalia, who's like, I don't know, looks less intelligent maybe because she is younger kind of thing. So that might win the battle. But I don't know. I liked Natalie. So that's a bummer if it does turn out the opposite way in which we hoped.
I mean, I wouldn't be upset if Natalia like won the name battle just because like from what I've seen of Natalie, it doesn't like I don't really like her that much. So even though it's totally going to screw up my boot list, I wouldn't mind if she went home early just because I prefer not to see people who are like annoying and lazy on my television. So
true, but then it's like, will Natalia make moves or will she be up Dan's ass the entire time and make final 3 because of Dan? Which kudos to Dan, I guess, but like we want people that'll make moves. But maybe both of them will make moves. We don't know. Maybe neither of them will be making any moves. Who knows?
We may never know. Ugh.
We thought Laurel would make a move, and then she never freaking did. So
and that's what cost her the game, but that's a totally different thing. We're not bitter. Us? Bitter? No.
So speaking of ruining boot lists, Pat was in my top 5, I believe. I think he was my 4th place finisher, and he also maybe rubbed people the wrong way this episode by being quote unquote bossy with the shelter, which it's hard to do when, like Natalia, she was saying how she was an industrial engineer. She does this kind of stuff. Pat is a contractor, so he also does this kind of stuff. Like, how can you be not bossy about something that you're obviously maybe the most qualified person to lead?
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things where the people on Pat's tribe were like, he's being bossy, but he got the shelter done. So it's like they recognize that like results are kind of important. So I thought it was interesting because a lot of times people don't really seem to look at the results. They're just like, this person's so bossy. I don't care what they have to say. They're being mean. So.
But yeah, look at the David's kick-ass shelter. It looks better than the Goliaths. Another like secret scene was posted on Survivor on CBS's YouTube of the Goliaths having issues with their shelter. Mike was sort of fighting with Jeremy about the shelter. So very interesting stuff being posted on the YouTubes. So I don't know. Like we mentioned earlier, I feel like Pat may have still been voted out early if he didn't get med-evac, but maybe that was just the edit that happens last night. And I don't know, sort of sad because you never know what could have happened, especially since it's so early, but that's Pat.
I feel like there was a lot of retroactive praising of Pat, like after he got med-evac. Someone on his tribe was like, I misinterpreted him so much. I thought he was bossy, but really he's such a sweet guy. And I was like, how much of this is true and how much of this is just you feeling bad for the fact that he got med-evac?
Honestly, good for them, you know, being so, like, it's probably sad and scary and everything like that, but it helped your tribe in the long run. So you have to be thanking Pat for getting hurt on the boat ride back.
Yeah. I feel like so many people this episode rubbed people the wrong way. Yikes. Speaking
of, we have Nick, who rubbed people the wrong way as well. So, first off, I guess rubbing people the wrong way, he says he doesn't want to waste his energy in building a shelter. He's here for the scheming. And then Carl, who is the truck driver, calls him out on being lazy. And it seems like a big thing with the Davids, especially because a lot of them have worked so hard in their lives, overcome the obstacles, all of the jazz like that, are very big into like team support, working hard, versus the Goliaths might not care as much about that, versus the Davids, who seem to care a lot about who's carrying their weight.
Yeah, I feel like the thing with the Davids is they feel like they already have such an insurmountable obstacle. And it's like if you have a task that's supposed to be getting done with 10 people, trying to do it with 9 people is very hard. So I thought it was interesting that they all were like keeping track of who was pulling their weight and like actively planning to get rid of the slacker.
Yeah, which is also like on the first day, okay, I can sort of get not wasting energy, but like you're here to make a good impression. Don't you want to impress people and like pull an equal amount at least? At least like pretend like you're doing something so it doesn't look like you're not doing anything and then you get called out. Like Natalie gets called out for, we see her standing there just telling people what to do but never doing anything. Nick, sort of same thing. I mean, it seems like something smart to do to pull your weight, especially on the first 3 days when you don't really have anything to base your votes off of besides who's pulling their weight, who's not annoying, who can do stuff.
Yeah, like the first vote is kind of like shooting a fish in a barrel, I guess. Like it's just really whoever gets shot, I think, because like there's so, like you can have alliances, but they're not really tested yet, and you don't really even know if your alliance members are good people to be aligned with. So I really would think that if you wanted to give the whole like don't do work strategy, you would at least do it in a way where it seems like you're doing work instead of like everyone being able to tell.
Yeah, that would be the smart thing. Like, Nick also, he shared his story. It was interesting because we see Jessica talk about her mom opening up about that abusive relationship. We see B opening up as well, talking about her abusive relationship. And I really liked that conversation. It was very sad, and I think it brought the tribe closer together. And being stuck in the rain under the canopy, you're going to talk about difficult subjects. And I thought it was really interesting that that made the edit, because I feel like a lot of times, a lot of the deeper stuff, conversations, whatever, don't really make the edit. And I think it was good to shed light on maybe relationship violence and stuff like that, because I feel like we've never heard about people talk about it on Survivor.
Yeah, I also think it was just like a genuinely like sweet moment where be like genuinely comforted Jessica about something that was just a very low point in her life. So I thought it was cool that they could like bond over that, and I wonder if that's like something that's going to come up again or something that's going to cause them to like connect.
Yeah, and I think Jessica as the 22-year-old, actually 19-year-old on the season, I feel like a lot of the tribe members, we see Carl wanting to bring her under his wing as like a daughter figure kind of thing. Jessica's in maybe, a pretty decent spot as like the young girl that you want to sort of nurture in that regards. Like B telling Jessica how strong she was kind of thing. B was like, making her feel better about everything too. And then with this entire conversation, it was after that, it cuts to Nick looking all weird in the shelter, and then cut to him hours later because it's pitch black outside, telling about his story. And then like maybe he realized it was time to open up, but I think just the editing with everything was so weird, and it sort of felt like he was just saying that stuff to say it rather than like it was part of the conversation because of the perceived time difference from when Jessica and B were talking to when Nick was like waking people up in the shelter to talk about his hardships.
I think it's one of those things too, though, where like if you've just met people, it can be hard to like talk to them about deeply personal issues. But I feel like as the day wore on, he probably was thinking more and more about it and about how like his own story might not have been that similar to either of theirs, but it still like had a place in this like deep conversations thing.
Yeah, I think maybe the editing was just weird because it was like related but not related kind of thing. Nick, I guess he's someone to look out for because they wouldn't have cut to something like that if it wasn't important for the future. But like literally, it was just weird like to watch how they were talking, and then hours later he just randomly brings up a story about himself. So I would be interested in knowing like, did he actually start to feel comfortable and that's why he wanted to share, or was he just sharing to share because he thought he was in a bad position and he just wanted to like mentally use the people into not voting him out because they feel bad for him?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because someone said like, "Oh, thanks for not saving this till the end," which I thought was interesting because it's like it's his story. He should be allowed to like say it whenever he wants to. So,
Yeah, everyone has some story this season. Like we mentioned, you can't really have that story at the final tribal council about how your life is so difficult, whatever, because everyone's lives, I feel like this season, they've had to overcome some adversity, and that's like the whole theme. So there's no ace in the holes this season.
yeah, just because I feel like otherwise it would become like a who has the worst life competition, which
Which, oh, I mean, then everyone, yeah, trying to one up one another with crappy lives, which that would not be fun to watch. So moving along, we see friendships forming on the David tribe, and they were some I guess semi-unlikely friendships. We see Lursa and Elizabeth bonding, and I'm like, this is an unlikely alliance. I can sort of dig it. Christian and Gabby, maybe a more you can guess it duo because they have the same antics. And Christian was so funny. He's like, Gabby and I, like are a show, like a twosome, but platonically. I was like, this dude.
yeah, I think in one of our past episodes we were talking about how like there are a lot more LGBTQ men on Survivor than LGBTQ women. So it was really cool to see Lursa like come out there and kick ass, and like within like the first 3 days she says like she's a purple-haired Puerto Rican lesbian, and I'm like, you go girl. So I thought that was like really cool. I really like Alyssa so far, and I definitely think that her friendship with Elizabeth is going to be lit.
Yeah, that is such an unlikely pair. Like you could root for it and no one would maybe guess it because of their differences and everything like that. I mean, that could be some bomb diggity alliance right there. Davy also catches a freaking octopus this episode. I'm like, so much cool stuff is happening on the David tribe than the Goliath tribe. And like, I want to root for the Davids now.
Yeah, the Davids just have a lot of cool stuff happening to them. So
Everyone
I'm
on the
excited.
Everyone on the Goliath tribe, it's literally all cocky people who are type A personalities. And that's the way it was probably casted because it's like Goliath, you fit that stereotype. But it's like all of them just fight the entire time they're on the screen. And it's like, I'd rather see the Davids like, oh, so fun, doing random stuff versus the Goliaths who are like, I earn more money than you, I went to a better school than you, I'm more successful than you.
Yeah, I cannot think of a single person from the Goliath tribe I like.
Angelina.
Do I even like her, though? I feel like I only like her. If I do like her, it's only because she doesn't suck as bad as the other ones. Not because I actually like her.
Yeah, honestly, the Davids a more cohesive group because they are bonding over their underdog status, which is very interesting. I feel like I do want to root for them now, and I'm sad that they lost the immunity challenge. And I think it will be interesting come a merge or tribe swap if the people want to stick together or if they're going to split up and try to like vote their same original tribe out. But it's also like, okay, original tribe means nothing. It's all random kind of thing. This season, you're put because of XYZ factor to be put into David versus Goliath. I feel like Davids may be more likely to want to stick together as a group because they're like, we need a David to win this season. That would be the ultimate David versus Goliath story. Whereas I feel like Goliaths would be more likely to be the type to flip on their Goliath members and try to bring Davids in maybe to vote other people out.
I feel like the Goliaths would flip on anyone who they think would give them a better chance of winning.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like they don't have as much of a sense of, like, an us so much as, like, me. Like, I want to win. I don't really care, like, who else comes along for the ride as long as I'm one of those last people. So
honestly, yeah, 100%. And I feel like we see that in every one of their jobs. Like to become boss, to become CEO, to become this amazing writer person, whatever, you have to have had killed the other sheep in the flock to make it up the totem pole. Like you don't get to where you are without sacrificing maybe some of your own. Maybe there are some moral ways to get to the boss position, but you have to get the promotion, and to beat your competitors to get the promotion to keep moving up in your field, you may have to
step on some people's backs.
Yeah, so that's a day in their life for them. So
yeah, I do definitely agree that like the Davids are more likely to stick together, which is why it was such a good thing that Pat was med-evac instead of having someone voted out, just because if David's main like asset is their unity, immediately having to like fracture them and make them pit them against each other was a bad thing for them. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. Like we said, honestly, this was the best thing that could have happened to the Davids. And that's what I was thinking when I was watching the episode. Like, okay, 15 minutes left. Pat's lying on the beach. Jeff's called in. There's no way a tribal's happening in the next 15 minutes. He's probably going to get medevaced, and that's going to be the end of the episode. Let's start Big Brother. And yeah, keeping that tribal unity and then going into next episode with that thing when they're going to walk into a reward, immunity challenge, whatever, Jeff will explain that Pat was medevaced. Everyone will be like, holy crap, like it's real.
Yeah, I feel like the worst part whenever someone is voted out is having to see the other tribe's reaction, just because it's like sometimes they're so shocked, and I feel like this is going to be one of those things where all the Goliaths are going to be like, oh my goodness.
Oh my god. It's going to be interesting because I think Gabby said it, or someone, or maybe Jessica, they were like, Pat is the strongest person on our tribe. And Pat was one of the larger guys like on the David tribe, I feel like. Out of the men, you have what? Davey, Carl, Christian, one more. But like he was the most, I feel like, physically strong looking because he was larger than the other people.
Yeah, and I feel like he's going to have to, without him, their chances of losing are probably low. lower, or chances of winning are lower. Because Nick is the guy that you forgot.
Oh, Nick. Yeah. Still a skinny dude. So everyone else is like really skinny, scrawny looking even. Unless it's puzzles, you know? In the immunity challenge, we didn't really the Davids weren't that far behind. And you can't really knock Carl for not doing the sand digging fast enough. And like they caught up on the puzzle. They were literally only 2 or 3 squares behind Goliaths from winning. And so the great equalizer. We have hope for our Davids to not be a tribe that loses all the time.
Yeah, I feel like the one big thing with that puzzle was it did still have a physical element where you were like pushing the big blocks. So I feel like if it had been like a normal slide puzzle where it didn't involve as much movement, the Davids could have won.
Yo, if everything's a slide puzzle this season, Christian's about to get his ass voted out so quickly once the merge comes, because you'll use him now and then vote him out if it's all slide puzzles.
Yeah, so we'll have to see with that. It would be interesting if they purposefully didn't put as many slide puzzles because of Christian.
But I guess technically you wouldn't know because everything is already set before the season starts. But I am very excited for next week. It's going to be interesting. I'm already, and so many people I've been reading in comments of the Survivor videos are like really, really hyped for this season. Everyone is saying Jeff is more hyped for this season than usual. Like, honestly, I feel like it could be a good season. We've had a lull with some less good seasons recently, but I hope this one's a good one, and I have a feeling maybe we can have a good season.
Yeah, I said at the beginning of this episode that I was pleasantly surprised with this premiere. So I'm really hoping that, like, as time goes on, we'll get some more, like, good characters and have a good season.
Yeah, so I am really excited for next Wednesday. Honestly, I just need to, like, binge everything now. So...
yeah, so let us know what you guys think of the premiere in the comments down below. Let us know what you think of Pat getting med-evac and how that affects the David tribe, because we'd love to hear from you. Do you agree with us that it's the best thing that could have happened? We want to know.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, and as usual, we love doing this and we love interacting with everyone. Just talking about Survivor is so much fun. So thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next week.
Bye.